Yo, what's up, guys? This is the part 3 of getting better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Being player interactions. Now, it has been a week since I made a video, and I've been just doing a lot. I recently quit my job because I absolutely hate it and all that good stuff. And I'm probably kicked off the temp agency, so I really gotta get on my grind. But anyway, I also went to Utah this past weekend. I had a lot of fun. I met up with Alex Simo, got my mat signed by him here, and I met Team Sam. I got his mat, or my mat signed there. So it's pretty awesome, but what exactly happened? There's been a lot of rumors going on with me in particular, because there is something that actually ended up happening there. At the very last round, round 8, both me and my opponent, we were both X1-2, and at that point, all of my non-wins, that includes my draws, are all Dracos. The one loss is Draco, and the other 2 losses was a straight Draco, and another straight Draco with an extra deck, which was weird. Round 8, of course, my last opponent just so happens to be another Draco, the only deck that I actually played more than once. You know, I wanted to play more Pendulums, but I only played against one Pendulum, and it was Pendulum FTK, and I just got all the Draco matchups. But anyway, we played it out, and of course, it ended in a draw again. So one of us, if either of us won, we would have made it to day 2. But the fact that both of us drew, we would have been under 16 points, and we wouldn't have been able to go. And so I was signing my name on the match slip. He asked me if I'm sure I want to settle for a draw, and I'm confused. I'm like, whoa, what the hell do you mean? Like, you know, what other option is there? A draw's a draw, right? But then he goes to say something about a collusion. I didn't even know what this was at the time, and so I asked him because I'm curious. All right, what is this? He says, where the other person pays the other person to give him the win, and, you know, I got optimistic. You know, keep in mind, I did not know this is illegal at all, and so I thought it was just I was optimistic. You know, I had another chance for a win. I thought he was just, you know, hurting for money and all that stuff, and I actually had some. But I never opened up the conversation. He opened the whole thing, so he brought it up and everything. It was basically like he was suggesting it to me, and I was like, oh, all right, well, $60. And then out of nowhere, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't give away wins for money. And he calls the judge immediately, and I'm confused. I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he was saying how bribing another player is an auto game loss. And at this point, I'm like, wow, so you basically try to bait hook me. He like baited me just so he can try to cheese for that win, so he doesn't get a draw, and so he can go to game 2, which is low as fuck. And he was actually a judge too. He's like some player from Texas. Like, I'm not gonna describe who he is because, you know, I can get in trouble by Konami and shit. But the fact remains is, like, I literally like got just baited so hard, and he got the judge. I mean, he tried to get me in trouble and shit, and I sat there and I was getting interrogated by all these high up judges and shit, and I made it very known to them that, hey, I didn't even know what this was. I didn't know this was legal, XY, because it's never happened to me before. You know, nobody's ever done this shit to me before. And I made it known to this guy that the reason why I believe he did that is because he didn't he didn't get a win, and whoever won would go to day 2. And since both of us drew, he was going to do whatever it takes to, you know, either DQ me, get me disqualified, so we can get a win to go on to day 2, which is like low as fuck. But I made it known that I didn't know, and he basically just tried to get a cheap win, and they ended up disqualifying him. Now, they still disqualified me because apparently ignorance isn't an excuse, I suppose. But I ended up writing this disqualification form, and everybody keeps saying up and down that I'm going to end up getting banned. And I end up asking the higher up judges, and asking everybody saying this is like why would I turn this in? And he was saying the reason why, he said a reason like a lot of people actually get banned is because they don't write anything down, they don't defend their case, and they just get banned. He said the reason for writing this is to it's going to Konami, and they're going to look it over and review it, and they're gonna see if it's even worth, you know, pursuing anything further. Like, if they're gonna see if it's like worth banning me over. And so, hopefully, you know, I explained the situation the best I could. So hopefully, I don't get banned. Hopefully, they realize that I didn't know, and I don't go to many high tier events. And so hopefully they'll just, you know, give me like a slap on the wrist or like whatever, say, no, you didn't know this guy was a judge, he clearly took advantage of you, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, you go about our days. But if I do get banned, that'd be very, very discouraging and all that stuff, because both of the locals over here in Colorado are both OTS stores. And if I'm banned, I can't compete in those either. So I would basically, it would suck ass, and I would basically end up just having to go to DBS or Dragon Ball Super and all that stuff, which, you know, it's okay. I started getting into it, and it's fun and all that, but, you know, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I've been playing that since, like, I was in 5th grade, so. Anyway, let's get started. We all know that, you know, deck building is a key to a lot of the successes in rounds and all that stuff. And, you know, consistency, ratios, and all that stuff is a big factor. But what's even, probably arguably even a bigger factor is player interactions. And what I mean by this is that half of this game really is mind games. Really playing mind games with your opponent. Like, literally the little things that you do to your opponent when it comes to gestures, facial expressions, like even certain phrases that you tend to say. Like, those all make a, like, they all make a massive difference there. They're all, like, huge deals. They're really big deals. And, like, you know, over the course of a game... Oh, shit. What is that? That's an empty sleeve. But over the course of a game, just doing, you know, just playing around with your opponent every now and then is just really... It really helps. Because it makes your, you know, you can get your opponent to make certain moves that you want them to, especially if you don't have the most optimal hand that you possibly have. And so that's just a neat tool to keep in mind. Now, let's say I'm going, okay, this hand is not that great, but let's say that I need this to resolve and all that stuff, and my opponent has a vortex on the board. Well, what do I need to do? I need to get the negate out of there. Now, most people will not negate Foolish Burial, but if you send signals, if you send signs to your opponent that, hey, this, if you send signs to your opponent that your hand isn't good, then they could be more decisive when it comes to negating certain cards. So, if I open this hand, and I don't want to give off a disappointing expression, because that could be, like, really obvious, kind of, but you want to, you know, you want to make it subtle that you're not too happy with your hand, and generally, if you keep staring at their negate, it makes them think that that there's very few options you have, and the longer you take to play a card, the more likely they are to negate the first card, if that makes any sense. So if I take about 20 seconds looking back and forth, and I'm, you know, not slow playing, don't do that, because that's, like, really bad. But, you know, if you're taking your time to decide if you want to play a certain card, and your opponent's looking at you, looking at your facial expressions, and they see that, you know, they can clearly see that you're thinking about playing a certain card, but you don't know if they'll negate or not. And, you know, based on them gathering information on your facial expressions, they can tell that, oh, if I negate this card, then I might win. And so you proceed to activate this pretty slowly to pretty much kind of let them see that it's all for nothing, or all or nothing kind of thing. And they'll jump to negate this because you baited them, you played them into negating, and, you know, you made them believe that your hand wasn't all that good, and this is the only option, because you took so long, or you took your time, and you're just, you know, again, you didn't look like super disappointed, because again, that's pretty obvious. But if you make it like really subtle, trying to keep your keeping your game face is one thing on an okay hand, but if it's on a hand that's not that great, you can really your opponent can tell, and so you can use this to your advantage by making the same kind of faces to where it's like, man, my hand is not that good, and this is like literally the only card, and there's the negate. You can use that to and you play your opponent into doing what you want, and so after they negated, you're free to go off and proceed with your plays, you know, like normal and all that stuff. And this stuff is actually what's contributed to winning me a lot of games, because I'm so good at playing mind games with my opponents. Playing mind games, like, again, this is like half of what Yu-Gi-Oh is all about. You know, who can deceive the other more into making misplays. Whoever is the best at doing this will generally have a good chance of success. Oh shoot, wrong thing. Yeah, but you know what I mean. You have a good chance of success when you do stuff like this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and shuffle up, and I'll give you another scenario which I do all the time. And this is confidence is also key into a lot of things. Not just confidence in your skill and confidence into going into like games and stuff. It's not just that, but it's also confidence in your demeanor and the form of "you got this" kind of thing. So let's say I open this up. And let's say the roles are reversed. Let's say I absolutely need this to resolve, and I got like, okay, let's just draw. We're just gonna draw like a few other cards in hand, just because. Let me go and flip those around. All right, there we go. To show you guys what I mean, because I have a very good demeanor when it comes to playing, but because of that, if your opponent senses a change in your demeanor, they can also, you know, that can give them a read based on if your hand is good or not game 2 or game 3, which gave that first scenario that I was just telling you that much more powerful. So if you go in like really confident game 1 and you're just really good and all that, you're just like, sure, that's fine, go for it, buddy, you know, stuff like that. And you're just like, all right, you know, you're doing all this stuff, and you're just like, you know, you just got your head held high all game turn 1, and then game 2 you don't open the greatest hand, but you want to bait out like negates and stuff, and your demeanor like changes or something. They can see that, they can sense that, and so they use that to their, you know, when you're playing throughout a match, you're constantly not only gathering knowledge about your opponent's deck, but you're gathering knowledge on the player. You are, you know, you get a gauge game 1 on what their demeanor is, and if anything changes, it gives them any sort of information, you know, any sort of different information. Game 2 or game 3 is huge, and they can often tell what it is. But you can also use that to your advantage by playing. You can use that by playing them. You can play them into thinking, hey, game 2, that hand I opened up that first time wasn't very good, and so that gives them a false read that my hand is bad, and I only have one card and one play, and they're quick to negate it because they know that your demeanor changed, and they know that you know, it was different from the very, very confident demeanor game 1. And so while they think, okay, I got this because, you know, his hand isn't as good, and he's taking his time debating on if he wants to play a card or not because I might negate, so if he plays it, I'm going to negate it. And that's how you use stuff like this to your advantage. Now, what do you do game 1? You activate, you go very confidently, you know, they clearly, they know that they have negates on the board, and I go, draw, standby phase, main phase 1, anything. Alright, awesome. Activate Brilliant Fusion. Response. You know, you literally come at them like super confident, and you play something like this, just like that, and they're just like, okay, he's throwing this in my face, so he obviously has other cards in his hand, or he's counting on me to negate, and so I'm not going to negate. Sometimes it works. It really works sometimes. When you come at them super confidently, just like that, they're hesitant to actually negate, your best card. You just throw it in their face, and they're just like, what, because it just fucks with their head, and they're just like, what else does he have? He's playing so confidently, and all that stuff. It's like, if I negate this, will I be screwed? And so they let it go. They let the shit go. I'm like, all right, cool. It's things like this. Player interaction is everything. Sometimes even phrases that you choose to say can very well contribute it can very well contribute to your victory. Now, my favorite one is when my opponent goes first, because I don't play hand traps. When my opponent goes first and they keep checking to make sure that there's no disruptions on my part, and every time they ask, I'm like, you know what, go all in. Sure, go for it. Make the biggest board you can make. When I say stuff like that, they automatically assume one thing: this guy has evenly matched in their hand. So, I really did used to have evenly matched in my main deck, in my main board, and that's when I started saying that, because I was like, oh, I got evenly matched in my hand, so I don't care if my opponent commits to the board. And that's where I got my quote, my phrase from, make the biggest board you can make, go for it. And, but when I took it out, I still ended up saying the same thing because I was just used to it. But what I started seeing is that when people think evenly matched is in hand, they're going to underbuild their board. That also contributes to a lot of your wins, because mind games, guys, mind games is really, really good. And if your opponent thinks that you haven't evenly matched in hand, they're not going to drop everything they can on the board in fear of, negates getting baited out and getting a board wiped. So they end in like one negate, and they keep like 4 cards in hand. And I'm like, alright, draw for turn. And I get stuff like this, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just, because I basically super bluffed them. I'm like, I don't necessarily bluff. I just say make the biggest board you can make. You're free to go in. And people are so scared of evenly, they undercommit, and so it makes it so much easier for me to just OTK the shit out of my opponent, because playing mind games, I hope you guys learned something from this. Like, these interactions, all these little interactions, like the choices that your opponents make, like, when you do a good job at feeding your opponent information on what kind of player you are and all that stuff, you can take advantage of that, and start giving them false information based on your demeanor, your facial expressions, your gestures, how decisive or how indecisive you are at making a move, because that also contributes to things. Because I'm very decisive game 1 when making moves, and so I start playing mind games with them game 2 and start pretending to be indecisive with making moves, which makes them more decisive into playing negates, which they just fall into it. They fall for it every time. And saying certain things, whatever phrases you got, like, keep going till I stop you. When I generally say stuff like that, when I got like cards face down, like, people get like really careful when I say keep going till I stop you, because that just gives them the pretense that, hey, he can stop me whenever he wants, and so it makes it to where they have to tiptoe and play carefully, and sometimes playing carefully instead of going all in can cost you a game. Same thing with, telling them, oh, go ahead, make the biggest board you can make, buddy. Making them think that, hey, there's evenly in hand, and I'm not going to commit everything, and it's just like, oh, alright, thank you, I'm just going to OTK you now. So, yeah. This part of the bit was pretty short. Granted, the video is still like just as long as the rest of them, but that's only because I had to tell you guys exactly what happened at Utah. I'm still pretty pissed about that. It's such a shame that players are actually like that, and that they'll do whatever it takes to win, even like if it means getting other players banned and shit, because apparently this is some serious shit that can get you banned. But the fact that, like, people, like, especially someone who's actually judge and knows this shit but does it anyway, is still, it's disgusting. It really is. Like, but anyway, it's whatever. What, you know, I'm still waiting on the suspended list update. I really want to know, but that's all, guys. What do you think about this? What do you think about, you know, my situation that happened at Utah? Has anything similar happened to you? What happened? Did you get banned for it? Did you have to write a, you know, disqualification form? You know, because, I don't know, because they allowed me to go into the venue day too. They allowed me to do that shit, but I couldn't do the other events. You know, I couldn't do any of the events, so, you know, but let me know what you guys think about this. Well, some of the tips I, you know, shared with you from this video, or even the past 2 videos, have they been helpful? Let me know in the comments below. This is J Money, and I am signing out.